Okay, once again, welcome back. Right now, we will have a talk by Professor Ivan. He's from the Division of Linguistics and Multilingual Studies, and he'll be giving a very interesting presentation on do young people speak worse than their parents. Okay, Professor Ivan.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for introducing me. As you just heard, I'm here with two of my colleagues, Asst and Frantisek, to talk to you about this interesting question: do young people speak worse than their parents? We come from School of Humanities and Social Sciences that is proudly celebrating 10 years of existence this year, and we're the Division of Linguistics and Multilingual Studies. We're also proud to be the only department in Singapore, the only linguistics department in Singapore. So if you want to study linguistics, this is a place to come. And our discipline is highly interdisciplinary. That means we borrow from others and we give to others. We interact with knowledge that is gained in several fields of human intellectual activity. So before I address the question that you came here to listen, let me just give you a brief overview of what it is that we do and what it is that you may want to do one day if you decide to study linguistics. So the question would be, what is linguistics? And the easiest answer to that is a scientific study of language. And there are some core linguistic topics, which would be the study of language structure, study of sounds and meaning, and study of language and context. And as I said, linguistics is very interdisciplinary, which means that there are intersections with other sciences, and sometimes these are social sciences, sometimes even can be humanities. So when it comes to sociology, some of the things that sociolinguists study are issues of language planning and policy, the cultural and symbolic value of language, language ideologies, language attitudes, questions of language and identity, language and gender, and so forth. There are intersections with psychology and neuroscience, and you will hear something about that in 10 minutes or so, 15 if I cut it short, from my colleague Asst. And these are the questions that pertain to the relationship between language and brain, how our brain processes language, how language gets acquired as a first language, as a second language, how kids in multilingual contexts such as Singapore acquire language, and also how you can understand and help people with some language disabilities such as dyslexia, aphasia, dementia, and so on and so forth. We have intersections with communication studies, and this is where we talk about things like intercultural communication. In intercultural, multi-ethnic, multicultural contexts, how people communicate, because even when they share the same language, they might still have different cultural backgrounds that might lead to simple misunderstandings. We're also interested in conversation analysis, what happens when people talk to each other, how turn-taking takes place, and how meaning, overall meaning, is created in the interpersonal interaction. With anthropologists, we share interest in preserving cultural diversity of this world. Many languages are being threatened by extinction, so there are a lot of languages that might disappear in a very short time. So some of our colleagues are concerned with language documentation, language preserving, and you can see how that works. You sit with someone, you collect linguistic data, you analyze it, and you preserve, you document language for future generations. Computer science and artificial intelligence, that is becoming more and more interesting. Can we use, and what are the extent of machine translation, of language processing? Can we teach computers to speak? How we process language with the aid of computers. All this comes under the label of computational linguistics, of computer science, and artificial intelligence as related to language. You might want to, sometimes as a linguist, you might be asked, your expertise might be sought when there is some linguistic evidence to be disputed or confirmed. So let's say someone is found dead with a suicide note, but there are reasonable doubts that the person might have not committed suicide, but someone has to come and confirm whether that suicide note is really by that person. So someone who does forensic linguistics, that's our intersection with law, would be the right person to act as an expert in that situation. So this might sound interesting, but you might ask yourself what it is that you can do with this degree, and we are proud to let you know that we're going to teach you how to think critically, how to be analytic, how to be aware of various cultural differences and cultural relativism that is significant for communication, and a lot of employers will love you for that. There are some concrete examples of career prospects. These are some of the possible career prospects that you might want to pursue afterwards. You might want to continue with academic work, but you might be happy working in public relations, publishing and communication industries, translation, language teaching, human resources, and all these things that listed behind me. And some of the concrete career prospects that have happened, or actually some of our students have been exposed to by working as interns during their studies in some of the establishments, include this long list. And I will just let you see, there are some ministries, there are publishing houses going on, there is corporations. So, the list is too long to fit in one page. So, if you have any questions about these general things, we'll be more than happy to talk to you, and the three of us are the people to address. And this is our logo, this tree around which I try to take you, and our website is up there, so you can see, you can take a closer look at what it is that we do, who the people working in the departments are, what their interests are, and this might be something that you want to do later. So without further ado, I will now move to the main question that you came here to listen, or at least to offer you one perspective. And the question for today is, do young people speak worse than their parents? As I led you through some of the subfields of linguistics, I told you that one of the fields is sociolinguistics, so that's the interest in language in its social context and its use. And I'm a sociolinguist, so I'll be giving you a sociolinguist perspective, or take a possible way of addressing this question. So before I start, can I just see, I'm not going to ask you what your opinion is, do young people speak worse than their parents, but what it is that you think I will say. Yes or no? So when I say yes, raise your hand, and when I say no, raise your hands. Yes. Alice and two other people. No? Who thinks that I will say no? A lot of people think that I will say no. Okay. I think you're probably right. So I will start by twisting this question. Do we ever encounter the question like, oh, do young people speak better than their parents? Do we ever have a situation where we hear people saying, oh, the way language is spoken now, the way people use language now is better than ever? Usually, it's the opposite. As we move through history, we always find this concern, oh my God, what is happening to our language? Language is in decline, people no longer know how to write properly, how to talk properly. So this is a recurrent, this is a recurrent theme, and it's one that really ties in language use, what comes out of our mouth or under our pen or fingers, with what is happening, some larger concerns in society. So let's go to this little illustrative cartoon where the kids say, and he's no way, and I'm moving, sorry. Can you hear me now? That? Okay. So, and the parents are, maybe we shouldn't make English the official language. This is one of the illustrations of that there is some kind of discrepancy, difference between how young people talk and how their parents talk, which is further illustrated by this cartoon, where the adult person is presented as some kind of a freak who is trying to get closer to the younger generation and says, like, everything's fine, your dad just bought one of these how to talk to teenagers videos. So he's, again, what we see there is like, okay, young people live in one world, the adults live in another world, and there is some difference in how they use language and communication. This is a fairly recent article written by a 20-year-old student, and her reaction to the decision of Oxford Dictionary to include in its latest inclusions of words like twerk, that's the verb, twerk, selfie, which is a noun, and unlike, which is a verb, again. Do you know what twerk is? Do you know? So I was rehearsing how to show you that, but now that we're on camera, maybe I don't have to. So, and I will lose my mic again, so I should probably skip thrusting my hips back and forth in a very seductive manner. So to twerk is to dance the way Miley Cyrus does, or Nicki Minaj. Selfie is a photo that you take of yourself with your camera, usually on a mobile phone. So self-taken photograph. And unlike is also a recent development, a recent phenomenon, and we see there how both language use in the context of computer-mediated communication, social networking, new media, is bringing about a particular change. In English language, verb to like is one of those stative verbs. It means that it expresses state. As such, the verb cannot have continuous tense. So it would be incorrect to say, I'm liking. Same goes for the verb to love. Nevertheless, McDonald's has I'm loving it campaign. So on Facebook, like has become an action verb. So something that by clicking on the like button, you like someone's photos, and you can reverse it. So so unlike is not the same as dislike. Dislike is also a stative verb. It expresses a state, something that lasts. Unlike is an action verb. It's a moment. So I spend the entire day liking your photos on Facebook in your album. So that means that here we have this extension. We have the new semantics and even the new way how the language works. So this girl who wrote this article, she is reacting against it. And she's like, oh no, I don't want us to be represented like that. We're all obsessed with how we look, with sex, with this and that. What does it mean when you introduce those words into Oxford Dictionary? You give them power. You somehow say like, okay, these words are legitimate. What this person doesn't know is that the good dictionaries don't work as some kind of prescription guides. This is what you should use, this is what you should not use. Dictionaries are here for us to record the historical development of language. So even if in a generation of your children, these words become obsolete, not in use, It will still be a document that in this part, in this moment, in this period of history, you know, our society was at that stage that these were the new hype words that people used. So we have to distinguish what it is, what we mean by what someone tells you that how you should speak and how you really speak. Linguists tend to be interested in describing the language, not telling you what you should do, as actress Emma Thompson did when she went to visit her previous school. And again, she is one of those who would say that yes, young people speak worse than their parents, and for that they sound stupid. So some of the things that you can see here, like, hey dude, what's up, yo man, you know, these are sentences that, of course, maybe you wouldn't use them, you know, it's a bit of American slang. But what I want to illustrate with those is that you're not going to go to your grandmother or your teacher and say something like that, right? Like, under no circumstances would you think, unless you really want to shock someone, would you go against societal norms that you implicitly know how you should use the language. But you're also not going to, unless you're very ironic and making a joke, go to your friend and say, would you please be so kind to allow me to do it? When you're writing your SMS, you're not going to be as concerned with capitalizing your letters. You're going to resort to linguistic economy, so you'll be saying things like going out, not necessarily I'm going out now. So, as such, language is a resource. It's not just our ability to produce grammatically correct sentences, but it's also the whole cultural baggage, the whole thing that we get socialized into, and this is how language can be used and is used in different contexts. So we develop something that is called communicative competence. So this is to know how to talk to your grandmother, how to talk to your parents, how to talk to your friends, how to write an email as opposed to an essay. So these are all things that we're not necessarily explicitly, like taught. Nobody, but we observe as we grow up. We develop this communicative competence, and as such, language becomes something about choices. It gives you, and when we say it's resource or it's a range of resources that you can dip into, and it's like, okay, in this situation I'll be doing this, in this situation I'll be doing that. You're not going to write your final paper using SMS talk. Although, when you write your short messages, you might want to abbreviate with 2, with 4, with something like that, B, just B instead of BE. But you're not going to be putting these things into your school essays. And there is no research that confirms that, regardless of what you might read in newspapers sometimes. It's moral panic. It's more about, generational gaps that happen every once in a while. So acts of using language are acts of identity. You move around, you go about your day, and you project certain positions. You're not constantly, oh, I'm a young Singaporean of this origin or that origin all day long, but that might become more important when you meet a foreigner. When you're a high school student, you're not all day long high school student, but that part of your identity might become more important in some contexts than others. And to conclude, there is something called age grading in sociolinguistics, which tells us that people do not use language all throughout their life in the same way. When you're younger, you want to highlight your youth identity, and as such you might refer to slang and non-standard language more often, but as you move through your life, you get educated, you start working in different jobs that might require you to use standard language more, you will do so. So parents used to be young once upon a time, and they probably had their own way of expressing their youthfulness and youth at that time, and their parents probably thought that they spoke worse than themselves. So to each one their own. I would like to thank you now and give floor to my colleague Alice, who might want to completely disagree with what I just said.
Thank you. There's a general difference. This clip is pointing in the direction of male professors only. Alright. You know the shirts of female is different, designed differently? Yeah. Okay, so how do I work with this? Thank you. All right, thank you, Ethan. So I'm Alice. I'm also one of the colleagues in LMS. So I'm going to give you something totally different from what you think I would say. And you may disagree with what I say today, but don't worry, it's an essay. So what you have to do is to take both sides' arguments. All right, you have to say something about you agree with that. You have to say to a certain extent that I don't agree with this. So I'm going to give you some evidence that say something else. All right, the other way of the other end of the story. All right, this is from a Facebook friend. Okay, this is how it's read. Today, 2-year-old can unlock an iPhone. Can he do that? Open and close their favorite apps. And when I was young, what I was doing, I'm not exactly eating dirt, sorry. No matter which one is more harmful, I'm telling you that there has been some evidence, all right, supporting the fact that the use of technology is not that helpful to kids' development, especially for the language development. All right. So I will talk about how technology changes our world. All right. In another way. All right. You still remember when was the last time you write a letter? I just couldn't recall. All right. You couldn't even find a stamp, so how can you write a letter? All right. So technology changes the world, but in what way that it changes the world? Scientists start to think about these questions. So, we are asking, like, so when the kid was exposed to this technology, how would that affect their development? And what are we interested in is we want to look at how technology changes the way we write and we read. All right. So will technology affect the way how we develop our language? Okay. So is it harmful or is it helpful? Technology. Would that be helpful to our reading development, our writing development, and our language ability? Would that be helpful or harmful? How many will say harmful? Helpful? Okay, half. Okay. So as I said, today my task is to say some counter evidence. So I have to find something. Okay, so what I will be doing is I will do a case study. I will present you a case study looking into this issue. All right, where is the effect of technology on literacy? So, and it will be on reading and writing. Okay, this is at my time when I was doing my homework. All right, and no matter it was English, whatever language that, whenever I have to do my homework, this is what I will do. Okay, you're right, and like what everyone is doing here. And more painfully, when I was learning Chinese, what I had to do, what did you do? 习字, all right, writing, all right. How many hours I wrote per day, I couldn't remember, or I just remember that was very painful, okay? And at that time I was wondering, can someone invent something that we don't have to write? All right, now we really do not have to write. What do? We type. All right. If you hand in an essay, which you write to the teacher in our class, all right, I will just return it to my student. Like, what is this? I couldn't read your handwriting. All right. So we type now. So how does typing hurt our reading development? This is a jar. All right. In English, it's pronounced as jar. All right. And in Mandarin Chinese, it is wanzi. Okay. And this is how I write jar in English. All right. This is my handwriting using my left hand. Okay. And do you still remember how to write wanzi? Please write out. One character. All right. How many of you can correctly write the first character? 1 to the 1. 1, 2, 3. Very few, less than 10%. In my class, in my language and the brain class, when my students was doing a presentation and they asked them to write this one, all right, only 1 out of the 50 students was able to write the word. All right. This is how it was written. Very complicated. All right. So much more complicated than writing an English word, isn't it? Okay, so we still don't know. So what is the merit of writing in our reading development? We don't know. Okay. So when we don't know yet. All right. So this is what I want to start with my presentation. So when you type in English, all right, when you type, so this is when you write, all right, when you type, J-A-R, all right, this is how you type. How do you type wanzi in computer? All right, G-U-A-N, and then tone, 4, all right, and then Z is Z-I-3. This is how you type, isn't it? And you have some more, even more advanced method, right? So sometimes if you have already written G-U-A-N and it will have already given you a lot of hints, all right, how many words are related, and then you choose 3, all right? And you don't even have to type the rest of the word, isn't it? Isn't it very convenient? Now you don't have to deal with reading, writing anymore, all right? All you have to do is typing, and typing the pronunciation of the characters, all right? You will not disagree the fact that now you don't have to write, it hurts your writing, all right? But will that hurt your reading ability? Would that be? So I started with some scientific evidence to show you that it does, all right? It does hurt a lot of your reading development, all right? Especially for young kids, when they stop writing and they start typing. So when was your first time using your computer to type Chinese? Long time ago, I couldn't even remember. At my time, it was when I was in secondary school. All right. So this is a paper published recently in 2013, talking about how the digital age affects children's language development in China. All right. In China, the kids, the first language in school and also in the society is all Mandarin Chinese, all right? So what they do is they want to look at the introduction of the digital age, right? So when the kids do not have to write anymore, starting from primary 3, all right? They don't have to write anymore, starting from that young age, how would that affect their reading development? So you will be very surprised of what the data that I will show you, all right? So what they are looking into is particularly a type of deficit. It's called dyslexia. All right, it's a kind of language disorders that is particularly about reading. All right, reading is about literacy. So when you can read well, then you will have high literacy. Okay, so the occurrence of this reading disability is in fact quite low in the past. All right, it was in fact quite low. Across different cultures, different language countries, the occurrence is not that high, all right, around 10 to 15. All right, so what they found in this paper, all right, the conclusion of the results is that the overall incidence of rate of severe reading disorder is not only mild, all right, severe reading disorder is record high in China, all right, at the time that they collect the data. All right, so here's the data. So they collect the data in 3 major cities in China. All right, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Jining. Do you know where is Jining? It's the northeast part of China in Shandong, right? Shandong province. So this is the data, all right? Grade 3, so they ask the kids to read some characters, all right? Whether they know this character, whether they know how to use this character, all right? Primary 3, all right? They study primary 3, primary 4, and primary 5, okay? So this is what they found. They look into whether there the incidence of occurrence of severe language disorders, all right, and severe reading disorders in these kids. And so the y-axis here is showing the percentage. So among the 100 students, how many of them will have this problem, or are having this problem, okay? So this is grade 3, not so much, all right? And this is only talking about Jining and not Beijing and Guangzhou. So basically nothing, 0%. 0% in. So no one in Beijing and Guangzhou, and only a very tiny portion of the students in Jining were suffering from reading disorders. Okay, do you understand this graph? Okay. Then I'm going to show you the results of grade 4. And this is collected from over thousands of children in each city, all right? And this is grade 5. So something must have happened. What happened? All right, they don't know. They just know that the number of students was jumping from grade 3 to grade 4 of over 30 to almost 70%. So what happened? Then they had a survey conducted in Jining only, all right, because the number from if you remember the graph, all right, in Jining it was almost 70% when it was grade 4. All right, so they conducted a survey in Jining among several hundreds of kids, and they asked them, all right, what happened from grade 3 to grade 4, all right? So this is what they found, all right? Children in Jining has been learning to use computers in classrooms since grade 3 for average of 40 minutes per week. That's not that many, but it's only in classroom, all right? And they started to learn to type Chinese character from the second semester of grade 3 by the using of intelligent pinyin input system, whatever that means. All right, intelligent probably means you type 1 and you get, and you don't have to write the first character anymore. All right, in grade 4, they commenced to use Microsoft Word and emails. Is it the same in Singapore? Is it? No, not that early. Okay, good. All right. Thus, the children in grade 4 and above were frequent users of computers, and along with the computer typed the Chinese character, they also used mobile phone to use text message. All right. And so they conducted a survey. All right, that was what happens. All right, and then they conducted a survey, asked the children, all right, all these children, whether they have a computer at home, all right, and how much time they spend on the computer per week. All right, and how much time they spend on the computer to type Chinese words, and how much time they use a mobile phone to type Chinese. All right, so that is what they want to see. And the result shows, very surprisingly, that the more the kids use typing method instead of writing, the worse the kids will perform in their reading. All right, so the more you type your character, meaning the less you write your characters. And what happened is that it will hurt your reading development severely. And from the data, you see that how severe it was. And more surprisingly, what they found was the more the kid writes, all right, the more they write, the better their reading ability is in the test. And researchers want to know why. Okay, why is that writing so important for reading development in Chinese? All right, I'm just talking about Chinese, not any other languages. Probably the English is not that much of a merit. All right. If you see the differences across different languages, probably the method of developing your reading ability can be very different. And what they found was that, what they argue was that probably this method of using pinyin to input Chinese character is conflicting with the traditional method of how we should really be acquiring language. This particular language, all right, is by writing. All right. If you don't write, it will harm your reading development. Okay, so this is what they found. Okay, and this is the final conclusion of the paper. So I don't have to say anything. You will have the answer for this from what I presented. And of course you will have other evidence to counter what I said. All right? Okay, so now I will pass my time to Frantisek, and he will be doing a concluding statement of how you should compose your GP paper if you were asked to do something like this.
Okay, hi, I'm Frantisek, this is Damien, he's my assistant here today. I hope he doesn't switch off anything in the process. Computers are not very good for him, I have just learned. I will also talk about this topic that Alice just did, and Ivan, whether young people speak worse than their parents. And I will do that from three perspectives that relate to the area of my study. But one will be very, very brief. That's the moral standpoint that we usually, from this perspective, usually the question is asked, right? Do young people speak worse? And then often the use of vulgarisms, impolite language conduct are meant. And it is suggested that young people might be, or younger generations might be more vulgar. From what I know about this is when we mean especially swearing and things like that, we are dealing with an interesting part of language. You know, when we have emotions, when we encounter situations, any situation, we have some kind of emotional response. If the situation is highly unpleasant, maybe even threatening, we tend to resort to some instinctive reactions. Yeah, it's called praise, and there can be a consequence in your behavior. If you burn your finger in hot water, you are likely to say something while you are moving your hand away. If someone bumps into you or pushes you or does something unpleasant, you can't stop yourself from saying something. Now these things that we say, everyone says them, but we are at the same time, as a society, not very happy that we can't help saying it. So we are imposing societal norms, taboos, on this kind of behavior, and we think maybe we can do without it. The fact is we can't. What it then leads to is that language needs to renew continuously the inventory of words that we use in these situations. So swear words usually are generation bound. A single generation will have their own set of swear words, set of cool words, set of words that identify them as a group, but the group that comes after them will have to devise their own because they feel that maybe the emotion that they want to express with that word it's not the right degree, it's not enough. So we had students that were looking at different types of swearing that you have here in Singapore locally. Turns out that there is a lot of Hokkien in there. And you would be surprised, so we had some trouble finding good informants for this, but there were several people in the family of this student who were quite keen to talk in more detail about how they swear and why. And we discovered that there were a lot of swear words that the old generation had, that the young generation had no idea of, that they existed. And across generations, people differ in their perception whether something is very offensive or not. And you see that things that are felt very offensive by the old generation usually are taken as less offensive later. And the youngest generation might think, well, it's not offensive at all for me. But even then, the strongest swear words here in Singapore still seem to be from Hokkien. Swearing in English doesn't quite do it yet. And there is some Malay, of course, also in there. So this is one angle from which this issue can be approached. And the story is more complicated. Right? There are certain restrictions that we impose on our culture imposes on the language, which make us change our behavior and have consequences for certain parts of language. The computer is very not good for him. The second issue here is the question of language evolution. So long term, do we speak worse than our ancestors? If we did, then I need to warn you here from this place that we will at some point revert back to monkeys again, and will not be able to communicate unless by calls and gestures. We will lose, we are already seem to be losing certain types of writing and so on. Well, that's not quite right. This doesn't sound right. We know that at some point in the past we didn't have language and now we have it. So we must have been doing something right in order to get where we are and being able to communicate. So long term, this kind of position cannot hold. We are developing language and likely things are still changing in language. We are living in ever larger groups. We need to communicate with a lot of strangers in the type of world in which we live. So the language, which is the channel to conduct or to kind of moderate the peaceful conduct among each other, is likely taking notice of it. How precisely, we don't quite know because we don't have so much information about how these things were done thousands of years ago. What we see though is that the way societies function, the way people live with each other in a particular place, have a significant effect on language, on the language that they speak. So whether these people, when they live in one place, whether they are more or less in equal relationships, everyone has enough food, everyone has a good place to stay, doesn't need to be worried about future, and there is no one that has there is a lot of reciprocal relationships. These kind of societies end up with different languages long term. Societies where this is the other way, where there is a high degree of dependency, inequality, go in another direction. And this is interesting.